Very good. Yes. I'm very happy to be here. Yes. Tell you some story about my life and how I came to Strathmore. You know, it was the year 1974, basically 11 years after the independence of the country, and I was in Bologna, in Italy. I had just finished my degree in biology in 1973, and I was actually trying to avoid the military service because, you know, at the time it was compulsory in Italy. It entailed 18 months in uniform, running up and down. So at the time, I was also living in a residence run by people of Opus Dei. And one day, the director called me and said, look, there is a program between the Italian government and the Kenyan government for a kind of technical cooperation, whereby they are looking for a person who could go and teach in Strathmore College in Nairobi. It is very interesting, he told me, because this service, which is a service offered to the emerging countries, you know, the developing countries, which can be exonerating you from the military service. In other words, you could actually do your military service in Kenya for 2 years. And then I said, yeah, interesting, check how life works, because, you know, in the past, my brother was in Kenya already in 1961, 62, working as an engineer. So I think there is something there. So, okay, so I say, okay, that's very, very interesting. And that is the way in which, I came to Kenya as a soldier of Italy to do my volunteer service as a teacher in Strathmore College, and at that time, Strathmore College of A-level, arts and sciences. So I started teaching biology. Of course, I didn't know any word in English. There was my mentor was Mr. Boruso, who at the time was already in the college, and he was actually teaching biology. So I joined him, and progressively I learned English. I started doing some practicals with students, and then with actually lecturing, and so on and so forth. Obviously, it was a jump into the past because, well, the socio-economical situation of the country at that time was completely different from what it is these days. Now you had very poor people, the students that used to come as boarding students to the school were coming from all over the country, and many times just with one pair of shoes, one shirt, you know, and walking around, you know. And I remember at the time going with Professor Sperling, who at the time was the principal of the college, to recruit students from all over the country. Okay, and that was also an opening mind, discovering, for instance, you know, that water does not come out of the taps, or milk does not come out of the shop. I learned the importance of farming, the importance of the countryside, etc. As a matter of fact, I came to Kenya with the DC-8 of Alitalia at that time, you know, DC-8, yes, which landed first in Jeddah, then in Entebbe, etc. And then I landed in this Embakasi airport, which is not the present one. The Embakasi airport was just a few buildings, and the people would board the plane by just walking into it, and people coming to say hello to you, you know, from the runway. Yes. So it was an altogether different reality. And then I was picked up by someone there in the college, and then my trip to the school was basically a trip in the countryside, because I could see only, you know, bushes and things along the Mombasa Road. There is incredible. So it was a bit of a shock, and of course, without talking about the food was a cultural shock altogether. You know. Also, because at the time the college was actually suffering a bit of economic constraints. Therefore, there was not much money, the food was limited, etc. But anyhow, little by little, I tried to adjust with the idea of going back to Italy as soon as possible. But after 2 years, you know, you start living with people, knowing people, making friends, etc. And therefore you say, okay, life here is not that bad. Then after 2 years, when I received my, you know, discharge letter from the Ministry of Defense in Italy, because I have done my military service, so I decided to stay 3 more years. At the same time, I left the job that I was involved in Bologna. I was working in a hospital in a small center of cancer research. So they kept me the place until I would come back, but they say, okay, now I'm going to stay. So I stayed and I stayed and I stayed, and I reached now 2025. Okay. So this is more or less what I did.
How did Silvano Producer make you feel more?
By first of all, taking the responsibility of teaching me English. You know, the first time I saw him, he said, "Do you speak English?" Ah, what? What did you say? So we got along very well. I was working in his office, you know, and Mr. Boruso was a kind of revelation to me, because he started telling me things that I had never thought, you know, about the situation of the world here and there, etc. So it contributed to my, we can say, intellectual development. He was a great teacher. He was a great tutor. Of course, as anyone has had his own fixed ideas, but you know, you can cope with them with charity. Yes.
How many years older was he than you?
How old?
How many years older was Silvano?
Well, Silvano was about 15 years older than me, yes, okay. I had already met him in Italy, and that prepared me for the challenges ahead, you know. Yeah.
Could you tell me a bit about what places you went to recruit students?
Well, basically all over the country, even the northeastern countries, Garissa, Mandera. Personally, I went with him once to Machakos. Machakos and Ukambani was very interesting, because it offered to me the possibility of discovering some parts of the country because Nairobi is just unique in its own way. So.
Excellent. What got you interested in teaching philosophy and ethics? When did that happen?
That is very interesting because, I am a member of Opus Dei, a numerary, and the numerary members receive let's say, a formation in theology and philosophy with studies that take place within the centers, etc. When I was in secondary school, I studied 3 years philosophy. 3 years, high school, right? Actually, it was not philosophy, it was history of philosophy, with a lot of emphasis on the modern and contemporary philosophers of the Western culture, etc. Well, frankly, I understood nothing of what they were talking about, because they were given in the course with their teaching that you never knew where this teaching came from or how it had developed in relation to the past or etc. And therefore, I had a kind of dislike for philosophy. But in the work in Opus Dei, it was different. I still remember started reading a book by a famous French philosopher called Etienne Gilson, had already written many books. And the book was called The Unity of Philosophical Experience. And I say, here there is something that I would be interested in, and it may have been the key to understand everything that I had studied in secondary school, the unity of philosophical experience. As a matter of fact, it was. And that book actually changed my perspective, my attitude towards philosophy. And therefore, I started taking a keen interest in it. Helped by the studies of philosophy and theology that were done in the centers of the work, in the centers of Opus Dei. That is the time in which I really said, biology, yeah, interesting, but it's not intellectually challenging. Okay, fine, that's it. So I kept reading, and even now I'm still reading and going deeper into certain concepts that I have acquired.
So you teach in the school. Were you asked at some point?
Sorry?
Were you asked at some point to teach in the Strathmore College? How did that come about?
Strathmore College, you mean Strathmore University?
Even in the school, I have a recollection that you taught ethics.
Yes. You see, the thing is this, that when I came to Strathmore, at that time Strathmore College, I started teaching biology A level, Form 5 and 6. However, that system was phased out in, if you remember, I think 1989, the last Form 6. And therefore, now you have KCSE, Form 4. However, I didn't feel like teaching biology at lower levels. And therefore, I started teaching something else. For instance, I started teaching technical drawing. Amazing, isn't it? because I always liked the geometric drawing, technical drawing. I had studied it in secondary school. I had also studied it in the first 2 years of engineering, because before biology I had become engineering, etc. So actually, I started teaching technical drawing, and it went quite well actually for some time, until even technical drawing was phased out, right? And then what the hell do I do? Sorry, what do I do? Uh, and then the school asked me if I could teach ethics. Fantastic. It has a philosophical connection, so I think I can actually do that effectively, right? So I started teaching ethics, right? Until 2010. Yes. When, sorry, I think it was 2015, when I stopped teaching at the school. And Strathmore University at the time contacted me if I could teach ethics there. See, fantastic, opening the university, great honor, And then I started teaching ethics, principles of ethics at the university, Strathmore University. But then the School of Humanities established 3 faculties of philosophy. They asked me if I could teach philosophy of nature. I say, okay, fine, perfect. So now I am actually teaching, lecturing principles of ethics, second year, and philosophy of nature, first year of undergraduates.
What's the difference between teaching a high school boy ethics and a university student?
Well, that is a very interesting question. Perhaps a bit more philosophical, tackling principles of ethics. Of course, in Strathmore, we was teaching only boys. At the university now you have girls. So you have to adjust your language also so that the women can understand things. But in general, there is not much difference here, okay? Because, difference between Form 4 and first year universities isn't much. Yeah.
Because I'm guessing someone who's in high school maybe had similar problems to you. They didn't understand philosophy, and maybe
yes,
someone didn't understand ethics at this stage.
Yeah.
How did you go about dealing with that kind of guys? Or people who have fixed ideas?
Well, I have had good experiences and bad experiences at the university, because there is a little bit of distance between the lecturers and the students. As much as you want to involve them in a conversation, dialogue, many times it's quite difficult. So you find yourself talking and talking and talking without understanding whether these people are understanding or not, okay? So, that is a challenge which I am still trying to see how to overcome, you see, and to make the students more participating. But obviously, the fact is that when you start talking about philosophy, in the real sense of the word, you are using concepts that are very abstract, which is expressed also in the terminology that you use. Because if you use a word form, people immediately engage not their mind, their imagination. And therefore, they take the form as shape, structure of something, right? Whereas form in philosophy refers to what things are.
Yeah, maybe you could tell the people what form is. There may be people listening who don't know what.
Anyway, you have to start, making that distinction.
Yes.
And the first distinction is when you study philosophy, put imagination aside and start engaging your mind. Your mind is where the intelligible realities stay. The imagination only deals with images of things that you see and experience. But you don't see and experience with your senses the form of things. When you ask yourself, what is this? You're referring to the form of it, which only the intellect can perceive. Eh? Okay, fine.
Yes.
Okay, that's for example.
That's
So that is the difficulty of abstraction, right? Mm. And many people are not able to reach that level, you see. Many people remain at the level of images.
And now with technology and
Oh,
less
yes.
reading, does that affect the way people are able to think?
Well, the AI, we have two aspects of our intellect. One is the practical reason, and the other one is the theoretical reason, okay? They are aspects of the same mind. The practical reason deals with a knowledge that you apply to do something, to make or to do. The theoretical reason is knowledge for knowledge's sake, right? And that is what universities should be. Knowledge for knowledge's sake, not for knowledge in view of some activity to be carried out. That's why one of the questions that students bring is, but what shall I do with philosophy? Is it going to give me food? Right? Am I going to make money with it? So the concerns of most people are in the area of making, doing, getting, but not in relation to knowledge, insofar as it enriches you spiritually.
How do you prove to me why that theoretical knowledge is so important for my life?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, because before you're asking me why the theoretical knowledge is important. Well, let us consider the following. Before you are a doctor, or an engineer, or a biologist, or an economist, or a financier, you are a man. And to be a man is not given once. It is a process. It is a process of growth in humanity. And this growth can be positive or negative, depending on the choices that you make. If the choices are good, you become a better man. If your choices are bad, you're becoming a worse man. Okay? And therefore, theoretical knowledge gives you the instruments to be able to distinguish what is good and what is evil. And when we talk about good and evil, we talk about ethics. Man is fundamentally an ethical person. Any choice that he makes, either he makes him a better man or a worse man, right? And in this, I actually make reference to great philosophers of the ancient world like Aristotle, who hit the nail in the right place by saying that the ultimate end of man is happiness. So science, technology, things don't bring you happiness.
What else?
They can bring you satisfaction for the next step, okay? But happiness is something that you experience spiritually when your life seeks a sense, a meaning. Why am I here on earth? As a possibility of non-being. And of course, if I have been put here on earth, means that I have a purpose, an ultimate purpose, not intermediate purposes as being an engineer, a doctor, or whatever, an ultimate one. And of course, that ultimate purpose makes reference to good and evil and eventually to ethics. Aristotle, where is happiness? In virtue. To be a virtuous man is to be a happy man, because only virtue can bring you up to the perfection of a human being. And of course, Aristotle was limited because he did not know how to continue at that stage, because obviously for Aristotle you die and that's it. Yeah? But in the Christian perspective, which continues with the Greek philosophers bringing the philosophy of the ancient Greeks to completion, the supernatural virtues of faith, hope, and charity eventually take you to a higher level, which is God Himself. And as a result, happiness. So the ultimate end of man is God Himself. And only if we reach there, we will be consequently happy. The concept of virtue entails practice. It entails doing acts of the same type constantly, so as to be able to do good automatically eventually in an habitual way. And these cardinal virtues of prudence, justice, fortitude, temperance are there in order to give moderation in everything that we do. An important cardinal virtue is prudence, because prudence is not what people think, not getting involved because we can get into trouble. No, prudence is a virtue of action. And as such, it requires other ancillary types of virtues which all enrich the practical intellect, and eventually they bring the man to the level of man that the ancient philosophers already envisaged. The ancient philosophers are the link, the ones that really, rather the key in order to understand the world in which we live, because most of the modern and contemporary philosophers have abandoned the realistic approach to the ancients. That's why it is an extremely important task now to revive the ancient philosophers, to rediscover the wisdom that they contain.
There's some people who say that all you need is virtue, you don't need God.
Yes.
What would you say to that?
Virtue, God. In other words, can you be good without God? Yes, you can be good without God. But will you always be good? And eventually, this is not the real issue. The real issue is, why am I here? If I am here to be good without eventually any reward, why should I be good? If at the end of my life I lose everything, what was the purpose of being good? I could have been the worst man ever, made my money, and killing a lot of people doesn't make any difference. But yet there is difference between good and evil. And this good and evil is not created by me. It's something that I am experiencing in my conscience. And of course, ultimately, the conscience is the proximate judge of all your actions. You cannot ever go against your conscience. However, when your conscience tells you that something is good or evil, it's not that it is actually determining what is good and what is evil. Because if that was the case, you would not have need of a conscience. And you would be the creator of what is good and what is evil. But it is there. And it erodes. It's a kind of razor, The conscience is a loudspeaker of someone.
Isn't it possible someone's conscience has been drowned?
Oh, yeah, of course. You can keep on putting conscience aside one time after another, but eventually it cuts your throat. You have the famous case of this American surgeon called Nathanson, Dr. Nathanson, who had carried out how many abortions, 50 or 50,000 abortions in his life, starting with his girlfriend. There's a moment in which his conscience snapped. He said, what the hell am I doing here? So in other words, you can silence your conscience as much as you want, all right, but it keeps bugging you. I personally have an experience of a friend of mine who was actually telling me after 10 years he had still a problem of conscience that he didn't know how to solve, you say. So don't play around with your conscience. Don't play around with your conscience.
How did you help your friend?
Yeah?
How did your friend, did he ever solve that problem, or how did he get out of that?
I don't know, because eventually I lost contact with him, but he was bringing it up.
Because I'm just thinking of someone who maybe has such a thing, his conscience is bugging him.
Yeah.
How does he kind of get that inner peace?
Well, if you are a Catholic, you go for confession and you express your sorrow and your determination to change. If you're not a Catholic, just say, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. Many times a day, right?
Okay. I think we covered a lot.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, you were asking me about a virtue that I would. Yeah.
The important virtues a young man should cultivate.
Well, before answering that, I would like to stress the attitude that people should have in life, a fundamental attitude of openness to truth. The word truth these days connotes nothing. The world these days has lost the meaning of truth. Anything goes. Falsehood, truth, nothing. Well, this attitude is a result of philosophical ideas that have been introduced in modern and contemporary philosophers, the dialectical philosophy of Hegel in Germany, in which bad and good confront each other in an antithesis, and then they produce a new synthesis, and therefore anything goes, truth confused with falsehood, and so on and so forth. So a fundamental openness to truth, which is the conformity of one's mind with reality. The conformity of one's mind with reality. In other words, the acceptance of reality for what it is, and not for what I would like it to be. And this position distinguishes very two different stands in philosophy: realism, idealism. Realism, idealism. We can say that presently we are in a culture, in an idealistic culture, because truth is not taken at face value. No, I want the truth to be what I want it to be. The reality is what I want it to be. I want to be a man, I am a man. I want to be a woman, I am a woman. And so on and so forth. I want to be something in between, I am something in between. But that is not a freedom. The real freedom is to accept the reality for what it is. But this does not suit many people. Why? Because what is reality job in imposing itself on me? I want to be free. I want to be free even from reality. So this absolute freedom that belongs only to God is actually, hijacked by man, saying, no, I am absolutely free. Free to decide what is good, what is evil. And the story of the original sin repeats itself. The devil that tells Eve, Eritis sicut Dei, you will be like gods. You see?
You won't be anything.
Correct.
What if someone says that I can't be truly happy
Unless?
Unless I change my reality and make my
Yeah, but it is a fiction, you see. It's a narcotic. It doesn't take you anywhere. It gives you some pleasure, perhaps, but not happiness. There will always be something at the bottom that says, what's the sense of all this? Why am I here? Where am I going? That's why many times people without meaning commit suicide, even if they have reached all the wealth of this world.
So, last question, or third last question. What are some important virtues a young man should cultivate?
In relation to truth, sincerity. Sincerity. Sincerity with oneself, sincerity with others, and ultimately sincerity with God. I have met a few times Saint Josemaria, who is the founder of Opus Dei. And in Big Together, someone would ask him, Father, what is the most important virtue? Well, he said, the most important virtue is charity. But after charity, sincerity. Sincerity. And what does sincerity consist? Well, sincerity consists in telling and accepting the whole truth without leaving out some parts of it, all right? And truth is what eventually will make a person free. Why? Because prejudices, superstitions, all these things create fear and therefore enslave people, whereas truth always frees, okay? Truth always frees. And ultimately, the freedom that, Christianity has brought us is the freedom of the children of God. Our Lord talks about this. The freedom of the children of God. And it cannot be otherwise, because in a household, children are the ones that are free, but the servants are not free. So in Christianity, the children of God are the ones really free. That's why this should give food for thought to many people. Right.
Okay. Maybe you have an anecdote that is relevant to all this.
Well, in relation to sincerity and truthfulness, I always love the story of Socrates. And the story of Socrates is very clear. He never compromised with the truth against prejudices, superstitions, false faiths. Socrates was preaching the true God and telling these guys, all the gods that you see there are rubbish. And that's why he was actually accused of atheism. Socrates accused of atheism. Accused of corrupting the youth. Because, Socrates was just like gadfly, asking the uncomfortable questions to it. Eventually, they arrested him and they forced him to commit suicide by drinking a poison. But a great thing about Socrates is his defense, the apology, before the tribunal, which was reported by Plato. A masterpiece. You should read it.
We'll definitely check it out.
Yeah.
One last question.
Yeah.
Formulating in my mind. I'm thinking of sincerity. How a young man, he listened to what you said, and how can he be sincere with himself, with others, and with God? Going forward, let's say he's finished Form 4, how can he be sincere?
How can he be sincere?
Yeah.
Well, one day I was walking in the entrance and I saw a little boy kicking a stone in the little entrance. And I told him, look, man, what the hell are you doing, man? He said, what am I doing? You're kicking a stone. Me? I'm not kicking anything. So, a lie in the presence of evidence. Where did he learn it?
Not from himself.
Not from himself, he must have learned because by himself. That is, you leave a kid without the education, with the guidance, he will behave like that. So where do they learn sincerity, truthfulness? At home, when the parents say, don't be afraid of truth, learn how to take your responsibilities. If you have done wrong, say it so, and if you have done well, you say it so. And there is where people will appreciate you, not by lying and by falsehood. Finished. But if that is not at home, education, fundamental, no?